I've been down.
It just got the community to understand that the Uptown is Greenwood. Without the Uptown, and probably without the lake, there are two things I think that are critical for our community to say we're Greenwood, and that's the Uptown and the lake. No, nothing wrong with the bypass, but everybody has that. Everybody has that commercial district. And so you want to have something that's unique and reflects your character, and that's Uptown. Basically, the city center master plan probably kicked off in the early 2000 period, but really Greenwood, I guess, has been in a resurgence since the 70s with the, I guess the first thing that changed was the relocation of JCPenney's and Belk's and some of the other major retailers to the mall. And so Uptown Greenwood had to find its new life. At that same time, they were going through the removal of the train tracks. So through, I guess, the 90s and into early 2000, most of the downtown, Uptown was office. So you had a lot of accounting, law, very limited number of retail, very limited number of restaurant establishments. There may have been 2 or 3 establishments in the Uptown area. In early 2000, the Arts Council saw the need that they wanted to expand and offer more of a art and culture gathering space. The theater was in dire need. The building that they were housed in, basically at 110 Main Street, was for all practical purposes falling in. And the museum was in horrible shape. And at that same time, in 2002, the federal government, what they call decommissioned, decided that they were done with the federal building and they didn't want to have any use for it. So it was almost like a perfect storm of things going on, and this nationwide movement of moving back into the downtown was growing. Things were happening fast in Greenville. So there was a little bit of timing, I guess, on our side. And so the federal building, a group came together, and the federal building was given to the city and the county jointly by the federal government to be used for the public good. And the Arts Council was very instrumental in putting the flag up and saying, hey, let's make this as our cultural hub. And so today we now have a 25,000 plus square foot multi-purpose cultural arts center, probably that anybody the size or smaller, bigger than Greenwood would be envious of. The Self Family Foundation was instrumental. They gifted about $2 million to renovate the federal building. And so here we are today. And so that was taking off. And so we had that knowledge at the time in early 2002, 2003. Also at that same time, creative people such as John Holloway were investing in the Uptown. John had bought his first building, which is now Sundance Studio on Maxwell Avenue. So really give credit to the Partnership Alliance at that time. The city and the county, it's difficult in local government elected officials because there's such a push not to spend tax dollars. Don't spend tax dollars. And so you've got to find public-private partnerships that help move projects forward. The public can understand them or respect projects better if there's private funding. And so the partnership, which is a public-private partnership here to push projects in the community, said, you know, the timing's probably right that we do a master plan for our downtown or our Uptown area. And so in 2004, they funded Arnett Muldrow, which is a consulting firm out of Greenville, to come in and do a master plan. And they talked a lot about anchoring. We needed an anchor project that would be the center, the catalyst. And we use Greenville a lot to compare it because we're all so familiar with Greenville. Greenville's anchors or their catalysts First was the Hyatt Hotel was their first catalyst, and then probably second was the Peace Center. Obviously, we don't have that scale, but so we saw the Arts Center is our anchor project, and then revitalizing the two adjoining cultural arts venues, the theater and the museum. And out of that, there were probably a dozen to 20 buildings that were all constructed in the late 1800s to early 1900s, that many of those adjoining those properties at the present time were vacant, were in severe decline. And so it was thought that this hub of activity around the Arts Center, the theater, and the museum would then spur this artistic movement to revitalize those many of those abandoned buildings and get people to express interest in the downtown again. So that process is now ongoing. Now we're into about the 8th or 9th year of that effort. We've learned there's one simple word that draws people, and that's food. So anytime that you have a food event, and people want a safe, social atmosphere. They want to come somewhere where they can talk, where they can meet their friends, they can push a stroller. That's the environment that they're looking for, and they'll pay for that. Free is not necessarily free is nice, but it's not necessarily the drawing card. We found that if you put events that they will actually pay high dollars to attend those events. So. The biggest challenge is to take a building that was constructed in the 1800s, 1900s under an existing or no existing code, when a building code or fire code, and then bring that up into current standards. So you've got to now bring the wiring up to code, the ingress, egress, how do you get people in and out up to code. If you put commercial on the bottom and residential on the second floor, well, there's code issues with that. You've got to make sure that there's proper fire rating, and that's a challenge. It's very expensive. It's very frustrating. You know, a great example would be Buffalo Grill in the Uptown. The challenge with the Greer building is that it was designed for an office setting. It was not designed for a restaurant or an assembly space. And so to be able to expand into the second floor, they had to come up with a unique way to get people out. And the way to do that, because the stairwell inside does not meet current code, it didn't make the code at the time, doesn't meet current code. So they had to be creative. And while the stairwell and deck system looks like it was created for outdoor eating, it was, but its #1 priority is ingress and egress to meet the fire code to get people in and out of the second floor. So we have to come up with creative ways to make sure that we can be unique and get these investments but meet the code, and it's expensive. There are many, people talk about a stool, and a stool's got 4 legs, and the key legs of a downtown, really you need office, you need retail, you need restaurants, and you need livability. You need people living. We are missing one key component of our stool in that we do not have people living downtown, or we probably have 4 condos. And so without that stool, we are not sustainable. And so we know that we've got to grow residential space in the downtown, figure out a way to incentivize it, encourage it, do everything that we can. Some of our larger buildings that are multi-story, that are vacant, get people living in those second, third, fourth floors. And I think that's coming. I think over the next 5 years you're going to see that, now that we're beginning to amass restaurants where people want to hang out, places where people want to be, success with farmers market, local growth. All those things are coming together. So we've got great office space, we've got excellent cluster of retail, women's clothing, men's clothing, restaurants, great outdoor events, but we're missing that 4th leg to that sustainable downtown, and that's residential. So we've got to bring that together. before we started, there was a lot of skepticism. There was a lot of, you know, this isn't going to happen. Where's the money going to come from? But as we have begun to have successful projects, first, you know, particularly with the revitalization of the streets, putting all the power lines underground, the new Acorn street level lamps on Oregon, then we did that on Maxwell. People are now coming to want that and expect that, the trees, the flowers. And so there's now when's the next project? There's now no more, you're still always going to have skeptical folks, but there are more people that are saying, what's next? What are we doing next? And so we are really building on momentum, and it's exciting.